Hello there and welcome to my guide for painting Happy Hogan and Pepper Potts for the Marvel Zombies board game. As you can see, to make things easier on myself, I've sprayed Happy black and I've sprayed Pepper Potts white. Both were sprayed using the Colour Forge paint spray range. I thought I'd kick things off with Pepper Potts, and for that I'm going to paint her skirt and her shoes with some black Templar contrast paint. And while that fully dries, I want to move on to Happy Hogan. Now, he is wearing a very deep purple suit, so I'm going to try and replicate that. And to do that, I'm going to start off with giving him a coat of Nagaroth Night. And then I'll give him the first wash of 3 of Nuln Oil. And while that wash dries, I'll move back to Pepper Potts, and I'm going to use some Corvus Black to start highlighting her skirt and her shoes. This will then be followed by a 50-50 mix of Corvus Black and Eshin Grey for the next highlight. And this will be followed by Eshin Grey just by itself for the final highlight. I'll then move on to a shirt, and I'm going to use Wraithbone for that. And since the first coat of Nuln Oil is dry on Happy, I'm going to give him his second coat now. And then I'll do a 50-50 mix of Wraithbone and Matte White for the first highlight of Pepper Potts' shirt. And this will be followed by a second highlight of just matte white. I'll take a quick break from Pepper and go back to Happy and do the final coat of Nuln Oil. Then I'll use matte white to paint the papers in her hands. Then I'll use a couple of coats of Nuln Oil just to fill out the details of the paperwork. Once the last wash on Happy was dry, I then mixed a 50-50 batch of Nagaroth Night and Corvus Black. I just highlighted the very edges and the sort of peaks where the light would hit. I then started work on Happy's shirt with some Grey Seer. Then a 50-50 mix of Grey Seer and Matte White. And for the final highlight, Matte White just by itself. I also used Matte White to paint his badge. I then neatened up his tie with Corvus Black, and followed with a highlight of a 50-50 mix of Corvus Black and Eshin Grey. I then used that Corvus Black to paint in some writing on his badge very carefully. I then used Mephiston Red to paint the red for Iron Man's helmet and the red areas on the briefcase that Pepper Potts is carrying. This was then washed with some Carroburg Crimson. I then did a 50-50 mix of Evil Sunz Scarlet and Iron Hand Steel to get a little bit of a metallic look going on for the red. This was then followed by a 50-50 mix of Evil Sunz Scarlet and Stormhost Silver for a much lighter highlight. And then I used some Wild Rider Red just to pick out the corners and any sort of bits that would stand out and the light would catch. I then used Retributor Armor to paint the gold sections. I then painted Happy's skin with Bugman's Glow, and used Cadian Flesh Tone on Pepper Potts. Both the skin and the gold was then given a wash with some Reichland Flesh Shade. Once that shade was dry, I used some Abaddon Black to mark in the eyes. This was followed by Matte White. And then finally Abaddon Black for the pupils. Then for Happy, I did a 50-50 mix of Bugman's Glow and Cadian Flesh Tone for the first highlight. This was followed by Cadian Flesh Tone. I also then used Cadian Flesh Tone to start building up the colour on Pepper Potts and to tidy everything up. This was then followed by a 50-50 mix of Cadian Flesh Tone and Kislev Flesh. And then Pepper, and only Pepper because we want her skin to be lighter, got a final highlight of Kislev Flesh. I then used some Evil Sunz Scarlet to give Pepper Potts a little bit of lipstick. I then relayered the Retributor Armor with some Retributor Armor, avoiding all the recesses. This was followed by a 50-50 mix of Retributor Armor and Uruk Armor Gold. Then Uruk Armor Gold just by itself, before a 50-50 mix of Auric Armor Gold and Stormhost Silver. I then used some Iron Hand Steel to paint the outer ring of the arc reactor on the briefcase. as well as the clip that's holding Happy's badge onto his jacket and his belt buckle. I then neatened up Happy's hair with some Abaddon black. I also took time to draw in some eyebrows, as on his card he's got kind of bushy eyebrows. His hair was then highlighted with some Corvus black. I used Temple Guard blue to paint the arc reactor, followed by a 50-50 mix of Temple Guard blue and Barahoth blue. This was then followed by Barahoth blue just by its lonesome, and this was followed by a tiny little dot of matte white just in the centre. I then painted Pepper's hair with some Troll Slayer orange, which was given a wash with some Frugran orange. I then painted the circles on Pepper's base with some Retributor armour, one section of Happy's base with some Iron Warriors, before painting the rest of the bases with some Iron Hand steel. I painted the rims of the bases with Abaddon black, and gave everything a wash with some watered down Agrax Earthshade. Even though there's not a lot of detailing on these guys, they are still pretty fun to paint. They're also incredibly super fast to paint as well. In fact, it only took me around about 2.5 hours to complete the pair. As ever, I had quite a lot of fun painting these guys. I think Command do really nice little models. Normally they're a lot more detailed than this, so it's actually quite nice to paint something that isn't so highly detailed. And with a super quick painting time, you'll get these guys done in no time whatsoever. If you followed this guide, I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you think about giving me a subscribe, the video a thumbs up, and well, I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye for now.